嗨，大家好，我是老外，欢迎收看《ITA看世界，一起看世界》。在节目的一开始，我们要跟大家聊聊饮食文化。不知道观众朋友有没有听过慢食运动？这个最早由意大利人倡导的运动，主要是发现现在大多数的人都以速食快餐的形式为主，在食物的选择上不那么重视。这项慢食运动是为了唤醒大家认识食物的来源跟制作的过程，除了提升对土地的关注，更能确保食物的来源是优质、干净、公平的。从食物链的关系回到土地，从重视土地延伸到环境文化。ITA这一次为您专访到来自冲绳推广慢食运动的琉球民族青年，听听他是怎么投入这个全球性的运动，又是如何深化自己的原住民族身份认同。
Inabayan ituhi matuka kualan. I'm here now in Okinawa, and it's very honored that we have a special guest right next to me. He is the leader of Slow Food Ryukyu. We're going to talk about what's the concept of slow food, and also how can we connect the concept of slow food to indigenous plant, indigenous herb, and also the indigenous food system, and also how can we look at our traditional food system from a right perspective. So maybe Dai, can you introduce yourself to our audience?
Hi, Said. My name is Dai Kitabayashi, and I'm a leader of Slow Food Ryukyu. And Slow Food Ryukyu's concept is promoting good, clean, and fair food, and to implement sustainable food system within our island. And also, we want to revive our traditional way of eating and traditional way of approach to our environment.
And because you're quite young, right? How did you get involved with the slow food movement? Because it's actually a worldwide movement. And so what was the reason you joined this movement?
Okay, so actually, like a few years ago, I was not in my island. I was away from my family, my home, working in Singapore. And I was actually host of some university students doing a small intern in some other Southeast Asia countries. And when I talked to them, they were like, you know, I want to go abroad because there is no future in our island. Not much job opportunity. If I go to Tokyo or mainland Japan, since the education level in Okinawa is not high enough, we can't be so competitive. I was like, why is everybody so, how do I say? Yeah, not very positive about their lives in Okinawa. I was like so wondering. And then when I came back, I was like looking for the reason behind. And I believe that our mindset and we ourselves are made from our food, like what we eat. And we found out that only 6% of our food is produced in our island. So almost like 94% is imported. So no wonder, like if we're not eating our own food, we will lose our energy. So like I started to look at what the agricultural system, what the food system within our island. Then that's how I met the idea of slow food, because Slow Food Nippon's one of the leader is actually Okinawan, and she introduced me the idea of slow food. And after I got to know, only 4 months after I got to know about this movement, I was in Italy for a conference and get to know what real slow food is.
Yeah. Okay. So because you are also indigenous yourself, and how do you see this connection between slow food concept with your indigenous identity?
Yeah, so actually only 3 years ago, I found out about this indigenous concept. And yes, I always knew that I wasn't a Japanese, I was more an Okinawan. But when I actually went to this Slow Food International Conference, I was selected as one of the speakers of Indigenous movement. And I was introduced as Indigenous youth from Okinawa, Ryukyu. And I was like, okay, now I can see myself as Indigenous youth. And Indigenous people are all scattered around in Japan, throughout the world, but we kind of somehow share like common issues, challenges. Then one of the biggest one is our traditional way of eating or farming is destroyed by those globalism or internationalization. So, but slow food is all about appreciate the producer there, appreciate the nature of environment, and harvest from the nature around you, then eat well. And that's exactly what Indigenous people do usually. So I was like, okay, slow food and Indigenous people food culture are actually equal. So I see this strong connection in between.
And I like what you mentioned that we are what we eat. So what would you say, like, for example, if we are going to introduce this concept, like people will think it's just food, it's just to make you not hungry. What's the big deal with the food? Well, how would you explain to more people about like why it's so important for us to know where's our food from, and also why it's important to eat like food produced locally?
Okay, all right. So there is one strong concept that Ryukyu people value. It's called nuchi gusui. Nuchi is life, heart, and gusui is a medicine. And nuchi gusui is the concept about food is medicine. And traditional way of eating or indigenous way of eating is always based on the condition of your body, seasons, and there is always like a reason behind why you eat this. So for example, this big, not watermelon, but it's called togam. And it's recommended to feed those to pregnant women. And it's because these veggies is good for feeding baby. So when you're having this condition, you should eat this because it's good for your something like mechanism. And traditionally, those idea was developed based on the food around you, because not much of like importing, exporting, and it wasn't convenient enough. So they need to experiment all these veggies around you to come up with like the best way to diet, your diet.
I think it's also because like as human being, as human body, we have different conditions from time to time, from different seasons, like from the morning to the evening. But that's the same to the nature. Like with different seasons, the nature will have different conditions. So that's why they also produce different kinds of food to provide for other creatures to also survive. So yeah, I think that's very, because for a lot of young people, maybe we'll just think, you just eat what we have. Like it's so convenient just to go to Family Mart or 7-Eleven to get food, but yeah, it's totally different story behind it. So I would like to ask you, because you were in United Nations and you were in this fellowship program, especially focused on the indigenous people's rights. So how would you say, like, how can we look at the food system or traditional food system, and also the revitalization of this traditional food system from a more human rights perspective? How can we also, in a way, to inform people, food in a way is actually human rights. To have decent or proper food is actually also human rights. How would you explain to people about this concept?
That's a good question. And ever since I joined this Indigenous Fellowship Program by OHCHR, exact the same question I've been asking to myself. And so far, what I'm thinking is, it's all about identity. Like in Okinawa now, youth or like in general, people are just going for whatever like Japanese are doing, and people just forget about the culture, tradition, like why we are eating this, why we're having this in our food. And in the media, in like the educational system, Japanese government is encouraging us to follow Japanese way. So the colonization is ongoing now. And with the assimilation policy, people just forget about like who we are. So when we talk about human rights, when we talk about we're indigenous, we would look back what we used to have and what we should preserve. So, but at the same time, coming in from human rights perspective and coming in from the food perspective is like two different way, but it comes together. And why we talk about food is you eat food every day somehow, and then if it's good food, people want it, like people will go for it. So when we talk about good food, which is good for you, for your body, and good for the environment, I think we can attract more people. But at the same time, when we talk about identity, we can think about like why we're losing our identity and what happened in our history. And for example, recognition of indigenous people would protect us to preserve our food culture. So those two are actually very close each other. So that's something we should advocate. That's what I think now. Am I answering correctly?
I think, because I mean, like, when we are talking about culture, the first thing come up to people might be like the language. Of course, that's the most significant element, one of the most significant elements of culture. But food is actually really also part of it. It's just sometimes we don't really think about food as part of the culture, and then from food we connect land, and that also relevant to our rights to land. So there's actually a lot of things that we can also talk about, and also from food, I think that's some the hidden element of colonization. Actually, it's just people don't really notice that much nowadays. So I think that's a very important thing. So finally, I would like to ask, as you mentioned about colonization, because as we know in Okinawa, the colonization is not only from Japan, but also because you have like very high percentage of land that is occupied by the military base from the US. So what would you say, like, what's your opinions on this? And also, like, if you can send a message to the younger generation to have them aware, to be aware of this is actually something we should keep in mind, we should be conscious about.
Okay. So I think, yes, Okinawan people are actually transferring knowledge in a way better than other area, because even though we have a huge battle in our land, people still transfer knowledge to the next generation. Even though a lot of people were killed and a lot of documents, facilities are burnt down, people still talk about this. There are a lot of people out there try their best to transfer to the next generation. And having this military base still, even though people are saying no to it, is still, we're still under like pressure or under the control of Japanese government and the US military forces. So younger generation needs to look at this fact that without raising our voice, situation wouldn't change. And if we let them do whatever they're doing right now and keep them doing going forward, we're going to definitely lose our culture and traditions. And what Japanese government and US military bases are doing now is landfilling our beautiful ocean. And Okinawan ocean, Okinawan beaches are one of the heritage of biodiversity.
Yeah.
And biodiversity is linking very closely to the diversity of culture. And that makes our world, Earth, is a beautiful place.
Yeah.
So that's something we should know, and we should keep talking.
Yeah.
We should make actions, take actions.
I think that also we can also link it back to food because we do have this biodiversity. That's why we have diversity of different food to provide to us. So, and then again link back to our identity. And also if everything is assimilated, like, yeah, it would be such a boring world. So
Everybody eats hamburger.
Yeah.
Every day.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. All right, thank you very much for sharing with us, and hope one day we will have more stories from Okinawa. And also, I think for the audience, our audience in Taiwan, we should really learn more about what's going on in Okinawa and also the culture of the Ryukyu and also different islands, because we're actually very close to each other.
Definitely.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
香港爆发反送中的运动以来，有许多记者在抗争前线冒着受伤的危险更新最新的现场状况。然而，香港的媒体自由似乎也蒙上了一层阴影，因为有一名印尼的公民记者因为签证过期的问题，不但被香港政府拘留，还被迫签署声明，表示是自愿离开香港的。稍后有完整的报道。